last one of the year. We've had a great successful run in 2023 with these webinars and podcasts. We've had so many amazing guests, from insurance experts to lenders to you name it. We've had it on here, and it's been a pleasure, Jim, this year hosting the webinar. Glad you could all attend. My name's Ryan Poole. Okay, I'm an agent just like yourselves. Been in the trenches for over 20 years doing this. I also launched a company called Real Trade 2 years ago. It's an online marketplace and social media platform for real estate. It's free for agents, and we have some exciting things that we're building for you guys. Best thing that we can do for Real Trade is you create a profile for free. You own your own listings, so you can get buyers directly off your own listings. Imagine that. We got agents making tens of thousands of extra dollars. So check out Real Trade when you get a chance. And like I said, it's a pleasure here to host with Jim. I'm a big fan of New Path Title. It is awesome software, Title Leap. Use it all the time for my closings, and it's an amazing title company and software. So go ahead, Jim. Why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
I'm Jim Brown. I've been practicing law in Florida for 20 years. I've been doing real estate transactions for 40. And I want to tell you guys that I comb the web. I comb the Association of Realtors agendas and see what they're talking about. I want you guys to know, if you tune in here, you'll hear stuff you won't hear other places. This won't be redundant content. You'll always learn something unique. You'll always get a different perspective on things, but the stuff we talk about, you won't hear other places. We're going to keep this to 30 or 40 minutes. I want to keep it tight. This is our last podcast of the year. I want to leave with a good taste in your mouth, not like you weren't drugged through the coals. Sometimes, morning, Terry. Sometimes people log on and they get into these deep conversations and rabbit holes. I'm going to try to keep this thing light and not superficial, but not get too in the weeds, because some of this stuff is really dry. But I'll give you some examples of where it actually works. If you turn on your camera, I can see your faces. I can get some input, see if you guys are understanding. Don't anybody hesitate to raise your hand, ask some questions in the chat. You can always go to New Path Title and text me from New Path Title. You get 24/7 attorney support. You can text me any future topics you want to hear about. You can text me any questions you had today about today. And then at the end, we'll have a little question and answer session if anybody had any questions. But along the way, if we have a small enough group, anybody wants to ask, feel free.
You can write your questions in the chat too as you go, so you don't forget them too, and we'll definitely get to them as well. Excited for this topic.
And then at the end, Ryan and I will give our pitch on how you guys can make more money and use our tools. All right, without further ado, unless anybody has any questions, we'll jump right into it. Let's see, screen share. Bear with me a second. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, do you guys want to hear about, show of hands, whoever's got their screen on, you want to hear about how people are stealing commissions, or you want to hear about the new condo addendum? Who wants to hear about how sellers are stealing commissions? All right.
I want to hear about both.
Let's do both. Let's do both. Let's do both, Jim. Let's get to it.
We'll do both. No, we're going to do both. I was just curious which anybody wanted to hear first. So here's how people are stealing commissions. Terry, this is a little redundant for you. Let's see.
Got it, Jim.
You guys see my screen?
Yep.
All right. 2 easy steps so agents don't get beat out of commissions by sellers and buyers reading Reddit and other social media forums. You guys, I hate to tell you this, but there are plenty of places people can go, and they're going. And I've given this lecture a couple times, and you know, it's distasteful. It's not something we want to participate in, and it's definitely not something we want to focus on. Just be aware of what's going on in the world. That's my job. I want to keep you guys educated, but at the same time, you know, don't shoot the messenger. Just be aware of what's going on in the world. This is real. So the protection clause in the listing agreement and the exclusive buyer's brokerage agreement are the sources of the issues. If you look in the listing agreement and the buyer's brokerage agreement, there's a protection period. So if you have a listing for a little while and the listing expires, or you get rid of the client, then you have a protection period. Provided you fill in the line that gives you that protection period, if the seller sells to a buyer that you showed the property to during your listing agreement, you get a commission. The only time that doesn't apply is if your seller, I'm sorry, goes out and gets another listing agent. So Can you see this? Let's see.
Yep.
Bar, listings and agencies disclosure, listing agreement, single agent. Ryan, can you see the,
Yeah, I can see the Alta Star.
all right, select form. Sorry, you guys, I timed out while we were getting ready to get to this thing. Bar, listing agency disclosures, listing agent single. So if you come down here to line 20, I think it's line 20 or line 125. You guys are due a commission in all situations, except if you go through the protection period. Let's see. Broker's fee is due in the following circumstances. Can you guys see this line 125, however?
Yep. Yeah, I see it, Jim.
So here's the fact pattern. You go through the listing agreement, you go through the listing term of your listing agreement, and your seller is either a pain in the butt or the thing expires under its own terms and your listing agreement ends. You have to put a number in here for the protection period. And then if your seller sells to any buyer that you showed during your listing period, then you're due a commission. However, in the contract, in the listing agreement contract, it says, however, no fee will be due broker. When you see capital B, that's you guys. When you see lowercase b, that's the future broker, right? Why is that? Capital B broker is a defined term. The defined term is defined earlier in the agreement. So every place you see capitalized terms, those are defined terms. So, however, no fee will be due broker, you, if the property is relisted after the termination date and sold through another broker, lowercase b. So if your seller goes out and hires a flat fee broker immediately after your listing ends, then for $100, they've cut off your right to your commission. And so people are going on Reddit, people are going on other social media platforms, and they're advertising this and they're taking advantage of it. I had 3 agents that this happened to recently. As soon as I hear it once, you see it over and over, and it's just something that's happening. Be aware. So what do? I would strike the however clause, just put a line through it, or in line 20 of your contract, we're back on the outline, Ryan?
Yep. Yep, I can see it.
You can either strike the however clause on line 125, or you can write in paragraph 14, the however clause in line 125 shall be of no force or effect. So you just want to take that out of there. Don't make a big thing of it. I think if you write this in the lower paragraph, this is the open clauses paragraph, I think it's going to be less conspicuous than if you strike something. Everybody looks at a contract and they see the stricken terms and they focus on that. Just something to be aware of. Same thing in the buyer's brokerage agreement. Strike the last sentence of paragraph 8, the one beginning with buyer's obligation to pay. Has the same kind of clause in there. If they relist the property, then you don't have to pay. And so if they get another buyer's broker, so in the buyer's brokerage agreement, if it ends under its own terms and they go out and get another buyer's broker, and it was properties you've shown them previously, then you get cut off your commission. So if you're doing buyer's brokerage agreements, you guys all familiar with that form? Not everybody's using it, but if you are,
we had a webinar on it, Jim, you know what I mean? And we
Yeah.
went back and forth on how comfortable people are with the buyer's brokerage
I
agreement.
can see the pros and the cons, right?
Yeah.
I always try to put myself in the shoes of an agent. If I'm an agent, quite frankly, and a buyer's shopping and they talk to 5 agents and they all want a buyer's brokerage agreement, and you get to that 6th agent and they don't, who's the buyer going to sign up with? They're going to sign up with the one who doesn't. Do I think it's a great idea to have them? I do, but I can also see the friction being a buyer, wanting to not sign up with somebody who requires it. I've given you guys the outline. Just be aware. And it is a real thing. So having said all that, does anybody have any questions about how sellers are cutting off buyers' rights to commissions in the protection period? So the other thing you want to do is when your listing expires, you want to just have a list of the people that you showed to the property. So you're the selling agent, your listing expires, or you cut the buyer off, you cut the seller off early, and you just send them a little list, and these are the people that you showed the property to while you listed it. Just a quick prophylactic step. If they sell the property to somebody, now you have an easy ask for your commission. having discussed that, you guys ready to go through 11 things that agents must deliver under the new condo addendum?
Let's do it. I mean, this is something that we've covered a lot, obviously, with the with the new condo laws at SB4D, all those good things. So this is something that's very relevant right now, especially as we get closer now to the date of Senate Bill 4D when they have to make those structural integrity, you know, tests, right? And then the reserve study that's coming up now at the end of 2024. So they have 1 year still to finish it, but all these condos are mandated now to have these studies.
And we're seeing this more and more. We talked about it at the beginning of the year, and now we're seeing it more and more. I'm getting calls from condo buyers, condo sellers, realtors. It's starting to become a thing. Everything that we're in the business, right? And so we think everything happens real fast and everybody's gonna be on things real quickly. It just takes time to saturate. Now I'm starting to get the calls. Go ahead, Alex.
So I'm dealing with the condo in Hallandale Beach where they have the opportunity to opt out of reserves due to their declaration page, which says that they do not have to have reserves. And the way it was explained to me by this, the listing agent who also lives in the building and is also the president of the HOA, she said that the state cannot create a law that I can't think of the right word, but that overrides. Supersedes, thank you. Overrides the original declaration. And so I'm kind of curious how that's going to play out because, yes, that is legitimate.
Alex, I'm so glad you asked that question. So the state can just, no, I am because I hear this frequently and I'm happy to talk about it in the forum. I get asked frequently that I get people calling me frequently about just that issue. So under the old law, an association could, what they call it was called the kick the can rule.
Mhm.
If you had a $1 million roof and you were going to set aside, and it had 10 years of useful life, you could kick the can down to the year that the roof was expiring and had to be replaced, and they could do $1 million assessment in the last year. Now, under the Senate Bill 4D, under the new statute, there's mandatory budgeting, and you can't postpone, you can't defer payments. So if you have a $1 million roof and it's got a 10-year life, the association has to go to a third-party budgeting. They have to go to an approved budgeting agent, and they have to set aside that money. And so they have to start putting aside the $100,000 a year by law. So the selling agent that was referring you to the law was the old law, and the new law, we can make it available. I should put a link to it in the outline, but the new law requires them to set it aside. And we're going to go over that section. It's at the end of the condo addendum.
Cool. Thank you.
You bet. So 11 things agents must deliver to buyers under the new condominium rider. This stuff is dry, but these tools can really make agents more efficient. Don't burn calories on agents who don't know the rules or waste your valuable time by not bulletproofing your transactions. What do I mean by that? If you miss one of these things, one of two things can happen. You can create an opportunity for your buyer to cancel, or you can just have unnecessary dialogue. What you want to do, you guys want to be like surgeons, right? You want to get in there, you want to get the bad stuff out, you want to get, move on with your life. If you know these rules inside and out, you're going to be like surgeons. And the thing that you don't have to do is you don't have to memorize the rule. You just have to know there's an issue. And if you see there's an issue, then you know where to go to find the rule. You go to newpathtitle.com, you click on Realtor Resources, and there's going to be there's a whole list of the outlines, and they're all listed by topic, and you can figure out what the rule is. Today, this is another important point. Today, you have to know your job, the other agent's job, and make sure the buyers don't have an out because the title agents were loose. People wake up in a bad mood. Buyers wake up and they have fights with their spouses and they want to get out of the agreement. I hear it all the time. Don't give them that out. Make an ironclad contract that nobody can find wiggle room on. March 2023, the Florida Association of Realtors and the Florida Bar drafted a new condominium rider. This included the new milestone reporting, to your point, Alex, and budgeting, and a bonus form I was not aware of. So when I show you what's going on, you guys, I'm just being fully transparent and candid. There's rules in here that I'm not aware of. And that's why I always say iron sharpens iron. You guys tell me the issues you're having in the field. I do a little bit of research and I get made sharper in the process too. So 11 things Florida condominium buyers must receive. in the special assessments and prorations section of the contract, all the board meetings and agendas 1 year prior to the effective date. You can put it in your listing agreement, you can put it just has to be made available to the buyer's agent. And notice to the buyer's agent is deemed notice to the buyer. Everybody familiar with that? Under the agency rules, if you tell the buyer's agent of something, the buyer can't later go back and say, we didn't know. Under the agency rules, notice to the buyer's agent is legal notice to the buyer. It's called constructive notice. Vice versa, if you're the selling agent and somebody's giving you notice, if the buyer's agent's giving you notice of something, you have to communicate it to your seller because you're deemed to have delivered constructive notice. So you got to deliver all the board meeting agendas 1 year prior to the effective date. You have to give all the board meeting minutes 1 year prior to the effective date. Now that sounds daunting, but we're going to go over other rules in the document in the form I wasn't aware of. That's going to make it easy for you to get all this stuff. In the we're talking about the condominium rider. Let's see, 11 things Florida condominium buyers must receive. So these are all from the condominium rider. Specialists in the section 5, non-developer disclosure. The declaration of condominium, that's pretty straightforward. These have always been in there. So these things right here that we just went over, they've been in there forever. Realtors don't typically deliver them. Very rarely do I see them deliver, but they've been in there forever. These have been in there forever, but I don't always see all of them delivered. The declaration of condominium, the articles of incorporation, the bylaws, the rules of the association. Sometimes you're going to see the bylaws and the rules lumped together in one document, just be aware. And then the FAQs are frequently asked questions and answers. What are the FAQs? By statute, all the associations are supposed to maintain them. They look like this. This is something from the Prado. It's got a bunch of common questions that when you start getting into some of the condo rules, it's really, really redundant. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's got a bunch of what are my voting rights in the condominium association, and it just goes over. There's a bunch of answers. What restrictions exist in the condominium documents on my right to the unit? It's all redundant stuff, but it is all in there. All right, now the new section. There's a form in the new condominium rider called governance forms, milestone inspection report, structural integrity reserve study. Need a capital S there. So, I'm not sure why it's not capitalizing. So there's a governance form. We'll go over that in a minute. But here's the new section of the condominium rider. Bar, condominium rider. Here's the sections of the document we were talking about. Special assessments section. Here's where you get the agenda stuff and the meeting minutes. The non-developer disclosures. Here's where you get the articles and the decks and the frequently asked questions and the financials and all that stuff. Here's the new section at the very bottom. Sorry. Governance form. Governance form, milestone inspection report, structural integrity reserve study. We'll go over the governance form in a second. Milestone inspection report summary. That's what Ryan was talking about earlier. If it's available, you have to get it to the buyer and get it in the buyer's hands. If it's available. So best, if you're a selling agent, do it in the listing. When you're getting the listing together, put it in your listing as a document, supporting document. Structural integrity reserve study. If it's available, you have to deliver it to your buyer. Alex, that's what you were asking about earlier. Under the old rule, it wasn't mandatory. Under the new rule, if it's something that is structurally necessary. So there's a whole list of components of a condominium, all the obvious stuff: roofs, stairways, electrical, fire systems, plumbing, anything that's life, safety, and health related. Those are all considered mandatory improvements that are captured in the milestone study, not visual things, not aesthetic things. Sometimes paint jobs, if the property is loaded with cracks, you're going to see, not loaded, but if there's cracks in the structure where water can get in and salt can get in, that becomes a structural element. So after everybody familiar with the Surfside collapse a couple of years ago, after the Surfside collapse, these are all resulting rules and disclosures as a result of Surfside.
Yep. I will say this, you know, as you're an agent, right, and you're representing a buyer that's buying in these older condos that, you know, this pertains to, this is a point of leverage that I've used, right, is I ask them if they have the milestone inspection report or the structural reserve study, if they're aware of it, right? And obviously, per that, they have to put in writing that they don't have them, right? So that then, you know, gets communicated to the listing agent. That's a point of leverage going, hey, you know, the seller, hey, we don't have this milestone inspection report. That's coming up. This might be a point that, you know, the price here in the future, once this reserve study and this inspection report comes, there could be special assessments. And now the buyer's aware of that we don't have that, and those are coming up. So it definitely is a point of leverage as far as negotiation in the contract. And I would definitely make that listing agent aware of that. Get, wow, I can't believe you guys don't have this yet, you know, and you got to
You
get
know,
it.
everything we talk about, it doesn't really matter how subtle it is. The bright agent knows that there's an opportunity for leverage there.
Yeah.
Every little thing we talk about is an opportunity to build your case as to why you should get your way. And if you know the rules, you can build your case. And I talk to plenty of agents that don't even know the rules exist, and they just think it's like another book in the page. No, that's a quiver. That's an arrow. That's a sword. You can either use it as a sword or a shield. Every single thing we talk about.
Yeah.
So there's your milestone inspection report. That's the comprehensive report. If it's available, if you look at the last line, it says if it's available, then first if it's applicable, right? So it has to be 3 stories or more, and then it's been submitted to the association. If it's available, the seller has to have a copy. The buyer has to receive a copy. Sorry, the buyer has to receive a copy. Same thing with the structural integrity reserve study. If it's not available, if it hasn't been done yet, then you're supposed to disclose in writing. The seller's agent is supposed to disclose in writing that it's not available. So when you go to your association, you're going to ask for a couple of things. You're going to ask for many things, and we're going to go over how you get that stuff in a minute. But this is going to be in them, and then we're going to go over best practices if this stuff isn't available. The last thing we're going to talk about is this governance form.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to be embarrassed if you raise your hand. Who has never heard of the governance form? I mean, I've heard of it, but who's never looked at it? If anybody says they've looked at the governance form, you got a job as a paralegal here. So this governance form is a document that they're throwing in to the pile of documents that we have to communicate. This is what it looks like. And so it's a whole list of things that if you're buying in a Florida condo, if you're buying a condo in Florida, buyers are made aware of. General rules on the conduct. Well, what I found in preparing for this seminar was this is a cheat sheet to a lot of things that agents call me on. So what I did was I boiled it down to a list of things that that they should know about the governance form. So agent's best practice, there it is. Okay. So agent's best practice, if the inspection report or reserve study has not been done, communicate this to the buyer in writing. Oh, this is another thing to keep in mind, and then we'll get into the governance form. I know I'm bouncing around. I'm sorry, you guys, but I've got the outlines for you. So know the difference between the treatment of special assessments under the Homeowners Association Community Disclosure and the Condominium Rider. Under the HOA, remember that the assessments are due from the seller if they're levied, right? A levied means they're provided and they're voted on and they're ratified and they're voted in and they're approved, right? So then the seller's liable for it if they're levied prior to closing. Under the condominium rider, your seller's gonna be liable if they appeared in the meeting minutes or the agenda 1 year prior to the sale. So there's a big difference in special assessments, and everybody knows what special assessments are. We're not talking about regular assessments. The condominium rider covers the payment of fines by the seller in section 3B, but does not cover closing violations. So there's a section as I was going over this stuff this morning that I had overlooked. In the condominium rider, did I close it already? No. In the condominium rider, there is a provision, and it makes common sense. Right here. Seller shall at closing pay all fines imposed against the unit by condominium association as of the closing date. Everybody sees it in the estoppel, but I did not remember that it was actually in the rider. Now here's an important one that I totally forgot about. If the property is part of a homeowners association, see rider B, homeowners association community disclosure for further information. So you have some condominiums that are in HOAs and the condominium. So then you need a condo rider and an HOA disclosure. Wow. and a lot of times you'll get the condominium association. It's easy to identify, obviously, but then there are some communities that are nestled within homeowners associations. And that's what this one was here. And then we have language that we've given agents. I can give it to you. I call it our magic language, which also covers, so the condominium association covers paying the fines that would be accruing on the unit at closing, but it doesn't cover necessarily curing the violation. With a simple sentence, we can include in the contract that the seller will cure all violations, because that's not covered in the contract. All right. Condominium governance form, important rules that matter to agents. Think of this like a cheat sheet for the basic rules. Agents call me on this stuff all the time. Don't feel bad. Until I wrote this outline, I didn't know what it said either. All right, so here's the cheat sheet of it. The board must respond to a substantive written request from a unit owner within 30 days. If they do it in writing, 60 days if it's a legal opinion. So if they have to hire a lawyer, they have 60 days to respond, and 10 days of receiving an opinion from the division. So if your unit owner asks a question, they have to get back to you within 30 days. Period, end of story. They're in violation of the statute if they don't. If they have to get a legal opinion, they have 60, and if they needed an opinion from the division of corporations or the division of, condo, timeshares, and mobile homes. If the unit owner requests financials in writing, the board has 5 days to deliver these. They have to make all the records available to a unit owner within 10 days of a written request. Remember we were talking about earlier, all these things you guys have to get from the association. So in the board of governance form, you've got the teeth to tell the association, I need all 11 of these things. And pursuant to the governance form, you guys have to deliver it. Now there's a statute that's behind the governance form, but it's easy if the association doesn't respond to send them the governance form and say, you guys have 10 days to get me this stuff, and here's my written request. It can't come from the agent. It's got to come from the seller. The agent is the conduit, but you can do everything that needs to be done to get that information to the association and make it from the seller. Board meetings must be posted conspicuously on the association property 48 hours in advance of the meeting. The part in quotes is obviously the part that comes right out of the governance form. Who knows what posted conspicuously means, but we have an association right over here on Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard. They are notorious for holding meetings and not giving notices and all the little things that the agents call me about, and they're upset. This is the rule on how they have to post before the meetings. If they're not doing it, then they're in violation of the statutes. Annual meetings must be posted or mailed or hand-delivered 14 days prior to the meeting. Before the board can fine or suspend a unit owner, this is interesting. If you guys have seen this in actuality, I haven't, but supposedly before the board can fine or suspend a unit owner, the board must give notice of a healing time. They must give notice of a hearing time before some healing can occur, and then assemble a committee of the other unit owners. Are you guys aware of this?
Wow. I mean, I've never had from the boards that I've served on. I've served on a couple condo boards, and I've never seen them suspend a unit owner. I mean, it would have
I've
to be.
seen suspended unit owners and I've seen fines, but I've never seen, before the board can fine or suspend, I've never seen them assemble a panel of other unit owners. Now, listen, I don't do condo law for a living. We have an attorney in here who's done quite a bit of condo law before he came to work with us, and he's telling me stuff I didn't know of all the time. But they're supposed to round up the unit owners and have a hearing and give notice of the hearing, and that's the only way it can happen legally. Notices due before a board member election. They do mail or personal delivery prior to the election 1 day. They got to do 2 notices, 1 day 60 days prior, 1 notice 60 days prior, and the second notice between 14 and 34 days prior. So there's the same I keep using this association. I wish this realtor that has a bunch of properties down the road on Palm Beach Lakes was tuned in, because this is the stuff that she calls me on all the time. Boards acting rogue, electing people, not giving notice, setting up their own boards. It's all in here. A unit owner can force the board to discuss an issue if 20% of the unit owners, if you put a petition together and you have 100 unit owners and 20 of them sign it, the board has to put that issue on the agenda. They cannot ignore you. Unit owner can take a record, any unit owner can record a board meeting. I've had board members call me and say, this person, they get in these fights over these non-important issues. But anyways, and so they'll call me and they'll tell me, no one's recording this, and they're not behaving this way. Yes, a unit owner can record a board meeting. Any unit owner can record a board meeting. The board can suspend a unit owner's right to the common elements if the unit owner violates the rules and is over 90 days past paying their dues. So they can only, so I have people say that they can't do certain things. They have to be, one of the ways is it has to be over $1,000 and 90 days late. A unit owner's right to vote can be suspended if they are over 90 days late and $1,000 are owed. Let's see, the board can suspend oh no, I said that wrong, I'm sorry. The board can suspend a unit owner's right to the common elements if the unit owner violates the rules and is over 90 days paying fees. So regardless of the amount, they can keep them out of the common elements if they're over 90 days late and they violated the rules. But they can suspend your right to vote if you're over 90 days late and you owe more than $1,000. So there's 2 issues. One is keeping you out of the common elements, which I get calls on frequently. And the other one is rights to vote. Here's an interesting one. If the board fails to fill board vacancies sufficient to form a quorum, there are easy legal remedies. A quorum is the minimum number of board members needed. So sometimes you'll hear that they haven't filled board seats. It's easy to get them to fill board seats. There's a cause of action, and they can't gerrymander the board. A unit owner who wants to be a board member may submit their name no less than 40 days prior to the elections. And you have to get the elections 60 days prior, so that's easy to do. And buildings with less than 10 units can make up their own voting rules. I hope this helped you guys. That concludes the 11 things that agents must deliver to buyers under the new condominium rider. And this list is in the outline that you guys have access to at New Path Title underneath Realtor Resources. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, Jim, it's Alex. I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you scroll down to a little bit lower? Stop. I'm sorry. Go back up a little bit. It's make reports, a little bit higher. Okay, right there. Make all records available to unit owner within 10 days of a written request. By records, are you talking about the typical records that are required within the 3-day rescission period for a condo?
All this stuff.
All that stuff. So how does that apply, right? If you have a 3-day rescission period and you have a 10-day time frame here, how does that work? I mean,
You do it ahead of the listing.
okay,
You do it ahead of the offer.
got it. Okay, perfect.
Let me add this. Let's just say, we do have a buyer, right, that is buying a condo and they go through the inspection period, right? And they go through it, but all of a sudden they get cold feet, right? Let's say you're representing the seller or the buyer, but let's just use this for the buyer, for instance. They're like, Ryan, we really don't want to move this. We found something else. We don't want to buy this anymore, right? Technically, like you're saying here, if this listing agent didn't provide these 11 things, what is your recourse? Let's say they didn't provide the structural integrity reserve study, or that they didn't provide notice that they don't have it. They didn't provide the other things here, even like the bylaws or the
This is the one that
frequent. I mean, like the
people-
frequently asked questions. Like that's a common one that I don't see a lot of agents put into their attached documents.
we get requests from other attorneys that don't even ask for this stuff when we're
Yeah.
representing sellers. It's just overlooked.
Yeah. So
But if-
technically, like I'm just saying, as a buyer's perspective, they have an out, right? Even if they're past their rescission period, if they never received these things and they requested them and they didn't get received or notice that they don't have them, right? For instance, like the structural integrity reserve study, I mean, they have an out, Jim, where they could get their money back from the sale.
We see people do that all the time here in the office, like especially frequently asked questions, use it as an out when they don't want to be in a deal anymore.
Buyer's right to void this agreement shall terminate at closing. So they have the out if they didn't get everything right up until the time of closing.
Wow.
And there's another case called Pine Tree. I don't remember the name of the case, but just in the back of your mind, remember, if the fees, not the special assessment, but if the regular reoccurring fees are not accurately disclosed, then under Pine Tree, the buyer has the right to get out at any time up until closing.
Yeah.
So you got to use common sense, right? I saw one the other day where the seller disclosed the fee was $385,000, $385, and the actual fee was $397 or something, or a couple of dollars more. That's no judge is going to say that's substantial. But if the fee is dramatically off, its disclosure is dramatically off from what the actual fee is, that could give your buyer a right to cancel anytime prior to closing. And I mean, I know tons of people who have no idea what their fees are because they've been coming out automatically for so long for them to guess. As a seller's agent, and quite frankly, you guys, like we said earlier, as a buyer's agent, you have to do both sides of the job. You have to know what if you're representing the buyer, you have to know what the seller's agent's supposed to be providing to you. It's like you got to do double duty, but that's just reality.
Yeah.
And 90% of the disagreements I see between agents are when agents don't know what the rules of the contract require.
Yeah. So just for me, like a little case study here, I have a listing coming up in Land of the Presidents, and it's a total mess in there. There's a bunch of different, HOAs in there, and I'm
I
looking
see
at.
Tajay nodding.
Yeah, no, I'm listing like one of those high rises there, and like the seller hasn't, I've been going back and forth with the seller because she hasn't been forthright and telling me about the specialist, assessments that are coming up. They had one, they're talking about it. I'm like, listen, under the condo rider here, we have to disclose this. Like technically, right, that the new potential buyer can review all the condo, minutes, right? They can review all of that. And if it's mentioned at all, I mean, they're going to see that, and we have to provide that. Just funny, like she's from New York and she's, kind of trying to be a little sneaky. I'm like, listen, we can't be sneaky on this thing. Like,
Ryan, you bring up an important point, right? So what does it mean? Let's go back to the condo rider. What does it mean? Can you see this clearly?
Yeah.
When they talk about seller represents that seller is not aware of any special or other assessments that has been levied by the association, or so it's been levied by the association, everybody gets that.
Yeah.
Or that has been an item on the agenda or reported in the meeting minutes. An item on the agenda means before every board meeting, and if everybody knows this, I'm sorry if it's redundant, but before every board meeting, there's an agenda that gets circulated. If the roof special assessment discussion is part of the agenda, regardless of whether it actually gets discussed or not, that has to be disclosed by seller to buyer. So it appears in the agenda that they said discussion of roof repairs. That has to be disclosed to the buyer that it was on the agenda. Now, if it's not on the agenda and Ryan's a board member and I'm a board member, and during the board meeting, Ryan says to me, hey, Jim, are we ever going to get around to talking about that roof that needs to be repaired? And the person recording the meeting minutes records it in the minutes. Now that has to be disclosed to buyer. Now,
Yep.
having said all that, who wants to review the meeting minutes and the agenda for a year prior to the sale? No way. But you don't have to as a seller's agent. If you deliver it to your buyer, you've done your job. If you deliver it to the buyer's agent as a seller's agent, you've done your job. You don't have to know whether it exists or not. You just have to have dumped it in their lap. And now as a buyer's agent, you would have to go through that stuff.
I mean, I wonder what percentage of these condos. Yeah,
Huh?
I just wonder what percentage of these older condos like that Lands of the Presidents that they have the minutes and the agenda available, like because
By law, they're supposed to, but
I
yeah.
know.
Chris, you got a question?
I do. So as a listing agent, if a seller were to say to you, I don't know what's on all these agendas, can we just put in that line, see the meeting minutes provided as a blanket answer?
You would make the meeting minutes, and so when you're getting the listing, you win the listing on Monday. On Tuesday, the first thing you do is you get the meeting minutes and the agenda, and you put it in your listing as the additional documents in your listing. And then in the course of your conversation with the buyer's agent, you can say, hey, just want to make sure you grabbed all the documents off the listing site.
Right, but as far as answering the question under paragraph CI, can you put in there see meeting minutes?
So represent sellers not aware of any special or other assessments that have been levied by the association. Has been an item on the agenda meetings in the last 12 months, except as follows. If special, yeah, see meeting minutes attached.
Just direct them. Okay.
Yeah, direct.
And you
them
just,
right
I mean,
there.
technically, you just have to point them to the documents on the MLS that they're downloadable there, and say, hey, did you get them? As Jim said, and you get an email like, yeah, I saw them and I got them. That's it. Like that's all you have to do on the listing side, right, Jim?
Yeah, I would say to Chris's point, and I hadn't actually thought about it, but yeah, in that line, you would say see attached meeting minutes and agenda, or meeting minutes and agenda provided in the listing agreement, or something like that. Like Ryan's saying, just point them to the document.
Right, in the listing on the MLS. Yes.
Yeah. What do you got, Brian?
I'm going back to that point Alex made. I mean, if you have that 3-day period to back out of the contract and they have 10 days to provide the data to you, that means technically 7 days, or 10 days before I even put an offer in, I've got to do that. I mean, and I know as a listing agent too, if I get 50 requests for that, am I supposed to send out 50 copies of the financials and all that stuff to people who may not even, I mean, where is that going? I've never seen that actually take place, and many listing agents don't put it in the documents, and you got to play Sherlock Holmes to try and hunt this stuff down.
Well, you got to play Sherlock Holmes the time you do the listing appointment, the listing agreement, for sure.
Talking about from the buyer's side, because if the listing agent has not done that, which many of them do not, then I'm serious. I mean,
yeah, I know. Like, what do we do? Do we sign an addendum then at that point saying, okay, per the condo rider, you have, we're supposed to have 3 days here to review this. It takes you 10 days to request it, to get it to us. Like, how do we close that gap? That's a great question.
You got to paper over it. You got to have some communication that it's forthcoming and your buyer doesn't object.
Yep, that was my question about, I was going to ask the same thing that just got asked, that, forever we've got 3 days for the buyer to review the documents, assuming we have everything from the listing agent, assuming we found everything, you know, and delivered it to the buyer. So the buyer has 3 days per the condo writer, but then you're talking about this 10-day period that they can get out. So where
No.
is that position of
It's not 10 days that you have to get out. It's 10 days that the association has to deliver. So this is what you do as an agent. You give the documents you have to your buyer. You say, this is what was provided to us from the seller's agent. And you tell them this is, so let's just say, this happens all the time. So let's just say you're able to deliver the decks and the articles and the bylaws and the rules and the financial reports, but you don't deliver the FAQs. You tell your buyer, we've got everything, here it is, but we don't have the FAQs. We're still trying to get it. What would you like to do? You know, you can give them an example of what FAQs might look like, but you just let them know that this is all we've got, and we've got to wait a little bit longer. And if you have to addendum, if you have to paper over it in an addendum, it's a pain in the butt. But if you don't do it, now the seller has an out. I mean, the buyer has an out.
Buyer has an out. I mean, you're
Yeah.
protect. It's kind of like you're protecting your buyer, though, in the sense, go, listen, if they don't provide these FAQs, right? Like, we have an out later on. Like, we could cancel this thing. I mean,
Well,
obviously,
the other thing is you're bulletproof in your deal, but you're also being the good agent, right? Best practices says that you're just a conduit of information. If you're aware of something and it's not happening, you're just communicating it. Live by the sword, die by the sword. You're telling the other side, you're telling your client what's going on. Then the client can never come back and say, Ryan, why didn't you tell me about this sooner, right? That's the worst feeling, is when you know of something, or well, even worse sometimes is when you didn't know of something and your client knows about it. And they're like, why didn't you tell me? Now you're just being the conduit. You're being totally transparent. You know, I'm not saying let the chips fall where they may.
no,
It's just,
I mean, it's going to be a big thing. This structural integrity test and the reserve study. I mean, you're going to have to provide these coming in the future, right? And if you're not, you're going to have to get in writing that they don't have them. And as we discussed, that's a leverage point. But
available.
that's
My-
probably all within 2024, the end of the year.
here's the good thing, right? The milestone and the inspection, the milestone reports and the budgeting, right? Those are huge. The
Yeah.
association knows right off the bat whether they've done them or not. They're probably not going to have problems providing them from what I've seen so far. The governance form, that's available online, or you can get my link. That's just a standard form. It's not unique to any one particular association. The ones that get to be tricky are the stupid, foolish ones that really don't have substantive impact on your transaction. The financial reports, sometimes they don't have current financials, but this is the one that stops everybody up, right? And you just
Yep.
want to be fully transparent. You want to tell your buyer, hey, the seller got us everything. This association, even though it's required under the law, they haven't provided it to us. How do you want to proceed? Well, what does it typically say? You can go grab the one that I provided to you and you can say, here's one from an association. It just gives you some more rules and you can choose to ignore it. They can paper over it in an addendum. Now your deal is bulletproof, right? You got to know. I'm not saying you got to know how to pitch this stuff, but you guys know, you got to know how to sell this stuff. Is this thing really going to change a buyer's opinion of whether they want to close or not? I would say no, but it's required. So you
Yep.
want to deal with it.
Okay, I still have a question. Beating a dead horse here, but under the condo rider, 3 days, you deliver all the documents except maybe the facts because you don't have them. We didn't know we needed them. So wait, so my buyer says, I delivered the documents to them, and within 3 days, they're like, everything's fine. Because tell me a buyer that really goes through all the minutes and all of the budget and all of the documents that may have been provided to them. So they accept within the 3 day period. Okay, there's no question. But then we're talking about, oh my God, they didn't deliver. So we've got 10 days to say, guess what? They didn't give the facts of frequently asked questions. And so we now have 10 days
No,
to help.
no. 10 days is the amount of time the association has to deliver documents to a unit owner when they request in writing.
All right, but the
If,
has-
hang on. If they don't deliver the FAQs, then you would just want to be fully transparent with your buyer and say, hey, we got everything but the FAQs. That's all.
And
Okay, so
then-
there's no out within the 10 days if they haven't received one of the documents.
The 10 days is a different time frame. The 10 days is when you give notice how long the association has to deliver them to the seller.
Okay. So we still stick with the 3 days then?
Yep. And you
So-
want to get this stuff ahead of time before you start getting offers, so you're not bumping up against that 10-day time frame because you know they only have 3 days.
Right. But as said, many of the listing agents do not provide documents. So
I would tell
that-
you, I've been doing this for 20 years in solo practice. I would tell you, if I wish Rudy was on the call, Tajay, you can probably chime in. We've probably seen them deliver this stuff 1 out of 100 the FAQs, 1 out of 100 transactions. Brian, what's up?
So you're saying technically if there's one piece of this they don't deliver, then the buyer can get out of the contract up to 3 days before closing.
No, it goes longer than that.
I mean, the day of closing.
Yeah.
I mean, the
The day
day
of
of closing. Yeah. It's a real leak, right? I mean, it really is. I mean, it's something that
Buyer's right to void this agreement shall terminate at
At
close.
closing, okay.
yeah.
And here's the thing, you guys. Again, it's how you make your, I'm not gonna say how you pitch it or how you sell it. It's how you make your client comfortable, right? Give them an example of what the FAQs are. Probably the biggest FAQ that's in there is, can you rent, the one that I get asked the most questions on, can you rent your condo during the first year of ownership? Can the condo be rented during the first year of ownership? What are the rental restrictions? If you know that, you can make your client comfortable. You don't get the FAQs. I get so many, there's another tool we can use to beat up the associations with that aren't forthcoming, right? What if they are not forthcoming even after you use the rule? You know, lenders have certain rules that they have, statutes that they have to deliver payoffs under and record satisfactions under. What if they don't? What are you going to do? Sue them? You know what I mean? The associations, they know this. And they're just obstinate associations. Again, you're not impotent as an agent. You go back to your client and you say, here's what another FAQs looks like. All the questions are the same. The answers are just different. So if your association doesn't give you the FAQs, you already know what the questions are. I've given them to you. You find those answers on your own and you just tell your client, we don't need the FAQs. Here's the answers. Does that make sense?
Pardon me, does the FAQ, if you're doing that, when you're getting the answers, does it have to be agreed upon by the association? Because we have a lot of condos that do not have FAQs. So you
want to make
we just
sure
literally make it up?
You want to make sure that the FAQ answers you are giving are accurate. So,
Okay, but they
if
don't
you're
need to be
making this stuff,
accepted.
if you look at your FAQs, here's a good example. Here's the one I get the most questions on. Use my unit. What restrictions are coming? Leasing my unit. Can you guys see this? What restrictions exist in the condominium document on the leasing of my unit? That's in every FAQ. The answers to this are going to vary from association to association. You don't want to make this stuff up, but you want to know what the answer is. So if your association doesn't have FAQs available to you, you can sit with your buyer, or the seller's agent can tell the buyer's agent, look, these guys are obstinate. They don't make it available, but you can't rent in your first year, or you can rent in your first year, but you got to make sure you're giving the right answer. And yeah. As agents, we got a lot of stresses, right? It's not selling sunset. It's not $1 million listing. It's not tennis and cafe lattes and showings at 3 o'clock to 3:30. It's hard work, but you know, that's where we differentiate ourselves because we have the answers. We know, you know, we're schooled. We know what to do. What do you got going on, Chris?
So I love all this question about the FAQ. So just maybe an example of clarity for myself. So if I'm a listing agent and I get all the documents except for the FAQ, and therefore I provide all documents to the buyer's agent except the FAQ, can I therefore, and I don't get it because it doesn't exist, can I then paper and say that the condominium does not have an FAQ? and have the buyer acknowledge that it is not forthcoming. So therefore, we are stopping that clock from going beyond the 3 days.
Yeah, basically you can paper over the fact they didn't get it. But before you do that, you want to get something from the association that says we don't provide FAQs. And Chris would just forward that email to the buyer's agent.
Got it.
Don't, you want to always be anytime you can, you want to be the conduit of information. You don't want to be the inventor of information. And when I say that, I mean simply, you don't want to make the statement that the association doesn't offer FAQs. You want to make the statement that here's the association's statement on their availability of FAQs, see below. Very important point.
So what, just to go back to what Chris said, what would you put in papering that addendum saying, the seller's HOA does not provide FAQs, buyer
waives their
buyer
waives
accepts the fact
FAQs.
that FAQs are not providable. I mean, do you put anything other language in there that says that they can't cancel then the day before closing?
No, just buyer waives their right to receive the FAQs. Keep it
Okay,
simple.
buyer waives the right to
Yeah.
receive the FAQs. Okay.
Just keep it as simple and short as you can. I mean, there are other provisions in the statute that say some of these items aren't voidable, but what can we do? You've got an obstinate association, and we've all dealt with them, and they're not going to produce it. So you got to do the best we can, and you're going to have an addendum that says buyer waives their right to receive FAQs. You might even have an association. I had an association the other day that wouldn't produce their financials. They said, we don't have it together and you can't make us do it. And in the governing documents, there's other rules about how long you have to produce. I mean, it's pretty detailed. Like I said, I don't feel bad telling you guys I wasn't aware. Meetings and notices, elections, association finances. I mean, there's all kinds of stipulations within 90 days after the end of the fiscal year, annually or update provided in the hot bylaws. The association must prepare a financial report for the preceding fiscal year. No later than 120 days after the end of the fiscal year or the other date is provided in the bylaws. The association must mail to each of the unit owners the address furnished, right? There are so many associations who don't do this stuff. What are you going to do? Are you going to sue them? You're not. You're just going to make your buyer aware. You're going to make your buyer's agent aware, depending on where you are on the deal, of what the deal is. Because you know the rules. But even though you know the rules, doesn't mean that they're going to conform. And you just have to figure out a way to paper yourself into a good position.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, just text me 24/7. Go to newpathtitle.com, click on 24/7 attorney support. And you can just send me a brief text about what the facts are, and I'll tell you exactly how to handle it.
Yeah. It's great info, Jim. I think it's funny though, with the structural integrity and then the reserve study that are going to be mandated now here by the end of this, 2024, of like how many condos are going to provide that. And then it comes to the end of the year and they don't have that. Then what happens? Wow, then it's a whole mess. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if it's even financeable if they don't provide that. It's going to be interesting. What percentage, Jim, just real quick, are you seeing of the condos that you're closing that they've provided the structural integrity test and the reserve study? I mean, is it still I'm sure it's a small percentage.
That's not happening. We're not privy to that.
Right, I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not in that loop.
Yeah, I haven't seen them because I haven't seen them on the condos that I've had that would apply that are 3 stories and higher. I haven't even seen.
I own a unit in the Bluffs in Jupiter. In the Bluffs, what they've done is they've posted that stuff on their website. And I own a property over at 3705 South Flagler, another one, low budget condo. And they make that stuff all available on their website. The budget and the inspections.
Good. Wow. What a great topic, Jim. Thank you for your expertise on this, coming from a real estate attorney of doing this well over 20 years. It's invaluable. I think we had some great, some great info that's been shared here that we can add up now to all our quivers. As you say, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, I mean, this is, to be honest, right, this stuff never gets old to me, and I love educating agents, and I love when agents text me about obscure parts of the law or some transaction, and I can respond to you guys. Terry had me on my toes the other day thinking about some old land use stuff I hadn't looked at forever. Brian's texted me on some stuff recently on things that I haven't been sharp on. And I love going back and looking at this stuff because we can all better each other's game. The whole point is, right, you don't burn a lot of calories after you get the thing under ink. You want to get it under ink as fast as you can, and that's where you want to burn the calories. Once you get it under ink, let the title company take over, go into cruise control. Use tools like Title Leap. Now comes my shameless plug. Use tools like Title Leap, right? You got an app. You guys use New Path Title. You're going to get our app. It works really good. It takes you through the closing process.
Make
Yeah.
your home closing fast, easy, and safe with Title.
Use tools like Title Advance. Title Advance is super easy. You go on there, you can click Title Advance. It's free. You get a free Title Advance on whatever you're doing, whether you're a buyer's agent making an offer and you want to offer on clean properties, or you want to win a listing agreement. You can walk into your listing with a Title Advance. And last but not least, if your title advance is dirty and you want to order a title insurance commitment, you can do one of two things. You can go to the bottom of title advance and you can order a title insurance commitment, or you can go to New Path Title and order a title insurance commitment. It costs $175. And when we close, I will give you back the $175. So what the commitment is, title advance report is a little summary of the transaction. It tells you what's going on, how many mortgages are there, you know, the liens and encumbrances. It won't tell you about title defects like probate issues or people that weren't named in a previous foreclosure or something. The title commitment is the actual closing tool that you're going to close under. So you use title advance for free and you win your listings and you make clean offers on clean properties. But if you find a property with a dirty title, then you can order the commitment. That's the actual roadmap to closing. Then we can take the steps to sanitize title and close on time. Is everybody clear on that?
Yeah, I just want to just piggyback on that and say, guys, that, you know, title advance can definitely save you. It would have saved me on some deals that I did like a year ago before Jim launched title advance, where I would have saved thousands of dollars as an agent, right? Because there was this crazy MV realty lien on the property. So that stuff shows up on a title advance and it's free, right? And you can order one on Real Trade. You can obviously go to New Path Title and order one, but take advantage of any listings that you're going into, get a title advance. You know, there's no surprises. And I do want to give a shout out here to Title Leap. Title Leap is like a free contract coordinator, guys, that I use on all my deals. All your drop dead dates are taken care of. You know, you're getting text, you're getting emailed when the, you know, the second deposit's due or the financing contingencies coming up. So it's just a great free service that you know, Jim provides, you know, through New Path Title and an awesome software, Title Leap, which I love software. I created Real Trade and I created it from an agent's perspective where we can actually build our own online presence, own our listings, network with buyers and sellers, and network with other agents and service providers like Jim's. I tell everybody it's a marketplace and social media platform for real estate. Think of it, Zillow, different business model mixed with LinkedIn. And Jim's one of the service providers you can get connected with on there, and there's others. So definitely take a use at it. Could save you, you know, make you tens of thousands of extra dollars just
You know
by
what I
side.
just realized, Ryan?
What's that?
Title Leap. You know what I just realized? The whole time I was doing this, I wasn't on screen share. So here's Title Leap.
Mm-hmm.
This is the tools. I just realized I had taken it off of
Make your
screen
home
share.
closing fast,
So here's
easy,
Title
and safe
Leap.
with
It's
Title.
an app we give you guys.
Dashboard lets you view all of your transactions at a glance and see what
Here's
That's
Title
great.
Leap. So here I did this whole. I talked to you guys without showing you the whole thing. Here's Title Advance. You can click on your free Title Advance report here. You can go to the bottom of titleadvance.io and you can order your title advance, or you can get your title insurance commitment, right? So that's titleadvance.io. And then on newpathtitle.com, you can order a title insurance commitment here, or you can order your title advance over here. So there's two products. One is title. Sorry, I did that without doing the screen
Yeah,
share.
Jim, I was a little confused there, but keep going. My
Nobody
job.
said
I didn't
anything.
know.
Nobody
I didn't
raised
know
their
that you were
hand.
trying to screen share.
Nobody said anything there. Hey, Jim, you're rambling on and we can't see anything. So, New Path Title. You can get title advances or you can order title insurance commitments. Titleadvance.io, same thing. You can order title advances. Title advances, our product. And on newpathtitle.com, you can also get 24/7 attorney support. And when you do a closing with New Path Title, you're going to get Title Leap, which is software that Danny and I and Tajay and everybody else on this string built just so that realtors can operate more efficiently. All right. That's all I got, you guys. Oh,
I
yeah.
have a question.
I got one more shameless plug. Ryan Poole, Real Trade, home of the double dip. Only place on the planet that buyers can get in touch with selling agents directly, and realtors get a free platform where they don't have to go broke building their own brand.
Yeah. Frederico has a question, Jim. Go ahead, Frederico.
Hi, hello everyone. Quick question. Is there any source to check if a co-op is still active or inactive? Is there a registry or something, a public record?
DBPR, Department of Business Practice and Regulation, their division of condominiums, timeshares, and I think has also the co-op records. If you want to text me the address of the condo, we can figure that out.
All right. Thanks so much.
You bet. I hope we didn't lose anybody while I was doing all that discussion with no screen share. All right. Did we get to all the questions in the chat? All right, you guys go out there.
Just Google Real Trade, Alex, and it'll come up, or it's realtrade.io. You can go to realtrade.io, but check that out. Definitely Jim's on there. We're posting all the time about the webinars and some great info shared there too. So, and there's buyers asking to connect with agents there too. So awesome, Jim.
All right, you guys have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was very useful.